The Debacle at Durham, Part 4. What became of them? And what of Arthur Ransome himself? In 1953, 5 years after the disaster of Durham, and only a few months short of his 70th birthday, Arthur Ransome finally received the honorary D.Litt degree he so richly deserved. It was his only academic honour, and it was from Leeds University, his hometown. He was enormously proud of it, but he must have been aware that he shared the recognition to some degree with his father. Cyril Ransome, now largely forgotten, was, in his day, a celebrated historian. He had taught at the Yorkshire College, later to become Leeds University. The university got 2 birds with a single shot. 1953 also brought Queen Elizabeth's coronation, and the year in which he finally featured in the New Year's Honours List. It was a list which included Herbert Reed, the anarchist poet, editor of Carl Jung. He was knighted for services to literature. Arthur, rather brutally described with the single word writer, was only made CBE. It was as far as the arcane etiquette of English chivalry would go, an award that fell into the pattern of his life, not gold after all, but something a little less and coming far too late. There would be no Sir Arthur, and certainly no Lady Ransome. But memories had clearly been stirred, and he chose that moment to write to P.G. Wodehouse, not about his CBE, but conveying the very old news about a boat Evgenia, 5 years earlier, had named Lottie Blossom. In fact, by this time he was writing about the second Lottie, also built to her specifications, the boat in which they ended their sailing days. Wodehouse made a wary reply from Long Island, and Hugh Brogan suggests he wasn't altogether sure who Arthur Ransome was. I think there may have been another reason for the caution. At the height of the campaign of denunciation, Sean O'Casey, you may recall, had referred to Wodehouse as literature's performing flea. 1953, that year, saw the publication of his elegant rejoinder, a book entitled Performing Flea. He may have concluded Ransome had read it and was intending to rake over ancient disputes. In any case, the correspondence, if you can call it that, petered out. Ransome did not make much of the CBE, so far as I know, writing only one significant letter describing the ceremony. This was addressed as a kind of long-delayed vindication to Sir James Duff at the University of Durham. 2 years ago, I wrote a biography of Ransome, or rather of the person I called the other Arthur Ransome, an attempt to get beyond the buttered eggs and marmalade and discover the land of myth that Margaret Drabble had so perceptively identified, a world I inhabited for much of my own childhood. The book rubbed some people up the wrong way, partly, I think, because it touched on a sensitive topic. It's widely believed that Ransome chose to avoid any reference to sex and sexuality in his novels. Indeed, it has been seen by some critics as a significant deficiency. It's a topic I will return to. For the moment, suffice it to say, I think these critics are wrong. There are those who would rather forget that Arthur Ransome was deeply involved with symbolist writers active in Paris at the turn of the century. Indeed, he had translated some significant works. All his life he was a devoted fisherman. Should we not have asked what might be lurking beneath the limpid surface of his deceptively artless prose? Was he, in fact, some kind of symbolist? And if so, how come we never noticed? In fact, I think Swallows and Amazons and its successors owes more to Remy de Gourmont than to George Henty, and owes far more to the Grimm brothers' fairy tales than to Knight's book on sailing. But, as I say, it's a topic I hope to return to. For the moment, I merely want to point to a very practical difficulty facing the biographer of a man who seems to have lived so many contradictory lives. It is a question of illustration. My publishers agreed to decorate the cover of the book with a small corner of a painting by the English artist Richard Dadd. The Fairy Fella's masterstroke was begun in 1855 and worked on by Dadd until 1864. It's a vast, immensely complicated and deeply symbolic painting. Dadd had been committed for many years to an insane asylum. He killed his father when he painted it, and we will never know in detail what it means. He tried to explain and failed in a very long and very obscure poem. All we know is that the painting, like the works of Arthur Ransome, draws on innumerable folkloric themes. Reason enough, I thought, to choose it as a cover. As you see, the Fairy Fella is shown flanked by powerful women peering out at a man wielding an axe. Make of that what you will. I'm not the first to be faced with the difficulty of choosing an image of Arthur Ransome. As you know, he disliked illustrations in which the face of a particular character was even visible. That was a job for the reader, he claimed, and oddly enough, it was an injunction he applied to himself. In 1962, Robert Lutyens produced a series of pen and ink sketches of members of the Old Burgundians, a private dining society of like-minded members of the Garrick Club. Ransome bought prints of all 11. He didn't think much of any of them, but he particularly detested his own portrait, and it's not too difficult to see why. Lutyens allowed a rather ruthless lighting to cast menacing shadows over a plainly cowed subject. He was a perceptive artist. Clearly he was seeing more than he should, and Ransome knew it. Lutyens sent a print to Rupert Hart Davis, who was then knocking Ransome's autobiography into shape, hoping that it might be used as an illustration, perhaps even as a cover. But Ransome was having none of that. He supplied a caricature of his own, little more than a doodle really, moustache rampant, eyes askance, bald head whimsically turned away in the swallow style, the gesture timidly defiant. If there had to be an image, he wrote, it was to be neither the CID man nor the political tough. Rather, it would be one of his best fictional creations, the benevolent, bald-headed, fisherman, sailor, his readers to this day demand.